If you watched Scarlet Heart Ryeo, you probably remember Queen Daemok as the cold, calculating villain, the woman willing to sacrifice anyone, even her own family, to reach the throne. But here's the twist. History doesn't describe her that way. In fact, history barely describes her at all. So the real question isn't, was she a villain? It's, what can we actually know about her? And what are we filling in ourselves? Because when it comes to women in 10th century Goryeo, we're working with a mix of hard facts and very careful, educated reconstruction. And in a court where a single whisper can get you killed, that silence speaks volumes. Before we even talk about Queen Daemok, we need to acknowledge something important. Historical records from this period, especially about women, are incredibly sparse. Most of what survives comes from texts like the Goryeosa, which focus overwhelmingly on kings, officials, and major political events. So when historians reconstruct someone like Queen Daemok, they're doing two things: pulling together the few confirmed facts, and then extrapolating based on cultural norms, political structures, and patterns we see in similar cases. So throughout this video, I'm going to clearly separate what is documented fact and what is logical inference based on the time period. Let's start with what we know for certain. Queen Daemok was the daughter of King Taejo, the founder of Goryeo. Her mother was Queen Sinjong, and that made her part of the Hwangju Hwangbo clan, one of the most powerful aristocratic families of the time. We also know she married her half-brother, King Gwangjong, and she gave birth to Gwangju, who later became King Gwangjong. Now here's what we can assume based on elite norms. As a daughter of a major clan, she would have been surrounded by tutors, attendants, and extended family networks. She would have been educated in Confucian ethics, ritual behavior, and aristocratic management. And most importantly, she would have been taught that her role in life was to strengthen her clan's position. That wasn't optional. That was her purpose. And her marriage reflected that perfectly. This wasn't about love or personal choice. This was political architecture. By marrying Gwangjong, she reinforced her clan's proximity to power. By producing the heir, she secured it. At this point, everything was going exactly the way it was supposed to for her. Until it wasn't. In 956, King Gwangjong enacted the Slave Emancipation Act. This freed people who had been enslaved during earlier conflicts. Now on the surface, that sounds like a humanitarian reform. And it was, but for Gwangjong, it served a much different purpose: breaking the power behind the clan system. Because for aristocratic clans, including the Hwangbo, those enslaved populations were a major source of labor, wealth, and military power. With this single act, Gwangjong demolished the foundation of their power, which put Queen Daemok in an impossible position. As queen, she couldn't oppose the king publicly, but as a Hwangbo daughter, she was expected to protect her clan's interests. So what did she do? We don't know for certain. There is no surviving record of her opposing the law. However, most historians believe she likely did, privately, because not opposing it would mean failing in the role she was raised for. But what would that actually look like? A queen in Goryeo didn't stand up in court and argue policy. That's not how the system worked. Her power was indirect, controlled, and often invisible. As queen, she had authority over ladies-in-waiting, palace attendants, court rituals, and scheduling. This may sound ceremonial, but it wasn't, because this structure controlled access to the king, the flow of information, and the environment around decision-making. If she pushed back against policy, it likely happened through those channels, through private conversations, through influence over who spoke and when, through subtle control of the court's daily rhythm, deciding which official received a private audience first, all while maintaining the appearance of complete loyalty. Because once a queen is seen as openly political, She loses the ability to influence anything at all. Whatever pressure existed, it didn't stop Gwangjong. He doubled down. His reign became increasingly defined by executions, exile, and political purges. He executed members of his own family, including a brother and nephews, creating a climate of fear among the nobility, proving nobody, not even the royal family, was safe. Historians often interpret this as a deepening distrust, possibly paranoia, and eventually, that suspicion reached his own son. The Goryeo records that Prince Gwangjong was implicated in a treason case. That's all it says. No details, no explanation. But we can analyze what that likely means. The things we know for certain are that he was implicated and that he was a child, around 5 to 10 years old. What we can infer is that he was almost certainly not the true target. A child doesn't organize treason. So who was the king really suspicious of? Most likely, the people surrounding the prince, especially members of the Hwangbo clan. And because they wielded so much influence over the prince, he may very well have suspected the boy too, which means Queen Daemok was now facing a completely different problem. This wasn't about policy anymore. It was about survival. We don't have records of what Daemok did next, but we do know the tools available to her. So imagine for a moment you're in her situation. Your husband is executing rivals. Your clan is under suspicion. Your young son has just been tied to treason. What do you do? First, you control proximity. Anyone who might be seen as politically dangerous gets distanced from the prince. Tutors, visitors, even extended family. You narrow that circle carefully. Anyone around him needs to appear harmless, invisible. At the same time, you gather information through attendants, court networks, whoever reports to you. You try to understand where suspicion is coming from and how close it's getting. Then there's the king. You can't confront him publicly, so you use private moments. You remind him, subtly, repeatedly, that this is his child. Not a rival, not a faction, his son. Not in one dramatic plea, but in small, consistent ways that reshape how he sees the boy. Meanwhile, you build quiet support. Nothing that looks like coordination, nothing that could be mistaken for conspiracy, just careful alignment, making sure the right people are invested in the prince's future. And finally, you use visibility where it's safe. Ritual, ceremonies, lineage, symbolism. You reinforce the message that your son is not just any child. He is the continuation of Taecho's line. We don't know which of these strategies she used, but we do know that doing nothing wasn't an option. So did it work? Here's what we know. Her son survived and went on to become King Gwangjong. Now, why he survived? We don't know. It could have been his position as the only remaining viable heir, or his father's uncertainty, or Queen Daemok's influence. Most likely, it was some combination of all three. But his survival is remarkable, given the scale of Gwangjong's purges. When Gwangjong eventually became king, he did something very telling. He issued a general amnesty. This act reversed many of Gwangjong's policies. Why? We don't have a direct explanation, but there are a few strong possibilities. One, the psychological impact of his upbringing. This may have been his way of atoning for the bloodshed by his father. 2, his loyalty to the Hwangbo clan. And 3, his chronic illness, which limited his ability to dominate court politics. Whatever the reason, the result was clear. Clan power resurged, and with it came an era of political instability. After this point, Daemok largely disappears from the record. We know only that she died somewhere between 975 and 1002, and that she received full honors. But her posthumous titles tell us something important. In Goryeo, these titles reflected how later generations judged a queen. Hers include meanings like serene, benevolent, humane, enlightened, and dignified. That is not the language used for a villain. It's the language of respect. So, no, Queen Daemok wasn't the one-dimensional, power-hungry antagonist we see on screen. She was something much more realistic, and arguably more impressive. A woman raised for one purpose, placed in an impossible position, navigating one of the most dangerous courts in Goryeo history. Not loudly, not visibly, but effectively enough that her line survived. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like and subscribe. Next week, we're stepping away from the history and back into the drama. We'll be comparing Scarlet Heart Ryeo to the original Chinese drama Scarlet Heart. Let's see which one wins the battle for most devastating storyline. And if you love stories about strategic matriarchs who use wit and subtle power to shape their world, you'll want to meet Mairi from Beneath the Destiny Stone. She's an absolute force. Here's a preview.
What happens betwixt ye and Koira isna for me to judge. My heart raced at her sudden contrition. Nay, it isna. The man's wary tone suggested he was equally disconcerted, though I doubted for the same reason. Mairi didn't miss a beat. And your love for her is so strong, no amount of temptation could lead you astray. Well, that's not precisely what I... He trailed off, seemingly unsure how to finish. Nay, I see it now. I've been a fool. The sound of spoons scraping against a kettle punctuated her words. Ye have an iron will, and this girl nor any other will soften it. His voice sounds so wary it almost came out a question. Good. Then you've naught to fear by extending a Christian hand to a lass in need. I'm sure you'll barely notice her presence, focused as ye are on Koira. Oh, she was good. Like Johnny Cochran with the glove good.